Elliotte, there's a lot of questions coming off the Tim Peel situation. There's the game management versus just call the rule book. And many that want to engage in that conversation say that, well, that's kind of like the lion saying to the antelope, hey, meet me halfway. There are others that say this talks to the idea.
What does that even mean?
It means that it favors one side and one side's going to devour the other, regardless of whether it's halfway or you go all the way.
Oh my God, what a tortured analogy.
Well, I'm just trying to get your attention here to begin the podcast. One of the other questions is, how do you want the game to be officiated? How do you want the game to be called? There's a lot of different angles and layers to this entire situation. We all know the story by now, the situation in the Detroit-Nashville game, what happened with the hot mic, what happened with Tim Peel, subsequent, what happened with the NHL shutting him down, but not firing him. For the remainder of the season, he will miss his final game. I want to shelf some of the stuff about wagering until a little bit later on, but on initial blush, what to you are the big issues involved around the Tim Peel situation?
Obviously the way games are called is a big deal. It's become the big part of the debate. For me, it's tough to take the wagering thing out of it because when I tried to reach out to as many officials, past and present, as I could, Jeff, a lot of them said they think it was a business decision first and foremost. I think the thing that surprised me the most was how quick the decision was made. Jeff, we're used to the NHL saying, we're going to take our time. We're going to think about it. We're going to weigh all the evidence and we'll let you know when we've reached a decision. How often does the NHL ever do something like this? And it happened on Monday night. It happened on Tuesday night, and the decision was announced at 9:30 on Wednesday morning. How often does that happen in the National Hockey League?
Seldom. We hear a lot about investigations, and it's going to be a thorough process, investigate and interview everybody involved, and we'll come to a decision at some point.
Okay, so I think there's really two separate conversations here. Number one is the way the game is officiated, and number two, the reason that it was announced so quickly. And I had one really interesting conversation with an official, and I double-checked it with some other guys to make sure it was accurate, both referee and elsewhere. And they said it was true, and that is in 2007, when the Tim Donaghy scandal happened in the NBA. And I want to say right from the beginning, I do not equate Tim Peel with Tim Donaghy. It's not the same thing, and I'm not accusing him of doing anything untoward in terms of gambling or anything. But if you're not familiar with this scenario, Tim Donaghy was caught gambling on NBA games, and he was fired. And
NBA official.
NBA official. He was fired, and he admitted it. And basically what happened was there was this huge crisis of confidence in NBA officiating. And the NBA painted him as one rogue official. They said this is not widespread. This is one official. And you get all sorts of arguments, agree, disagree, whatever. But at that time, the NHL, and I believe the investigation, I shouldn't even call it an investigation, I call it a conversation, was led by Bill Daly, the deputy commissioner. And he reached out to the NHL officials and the Officials Association, and he said, I need to know right now, do we have a problem? Is this also the case in our league? And, a number of officials who were around then, they didn't go specifically into the conversations, but they remembered the conversations. They said they were very serious. The league was very concerned. And the officials understood too, because it was the appearance of something being done illegally or untoward, or now it was in the public domain that officials were fooling around with the game and how serious that is. And the damage it does to your brand and the crisis of consumer confidence. And they all talked about that being why they thought the NHL reacted as quickly as it did. If you were around at that time and you were, and the CBA between the league and officials now has things in it specifically about gambling and what you're allowed to do away. Like apparently you can't even participate in pools and things like that. And, that's what that was about. It was about if something like that happens in your league, we can all say we know there's makeup calls. Like that's, I think, Jeff, what a lot of the reaction was. Everybody knows there's makeup calls in every league. Everybody knows that certain players get the calls or don't get the calls in every league. Everybody knows how every league handles their officiating. But when it's out there and it's admitted to, it's beyond the line that leagues are willing to go. And the NHL saw the damage that the NBA went through with that, and they said, we cannot allow that to happen. So even though Tim Peel is not anywhere near the same universe as that situation, it was always about that. And the gambling thing is, and this is the other thing too, is, and I'm still doing some more work on this, if you're going to, gambling's going to be a big part of the post-pandemic world. People are not going to wager on your games if they think that they're manipulated like that. And again, there's a difference between, and I had this argument with someone today, there's a difference between people understanding that there are makeup calls and people hearing that. And ultimately, what do commissioners do and leagues do first and foremost? They protect the shield. They protect the brand. And that's why I believe, as much as everybody talks about officiating, I believe this was about protecting the brand first and foremost.
But the whole thing does ring a little bit hollow, considering everybody understands how this sausage is made. Everybody understands, and you just referenced this, everybody understands that there are makeup calls. We hear coaches talk about this all the time in post-game press conferences. They had 9 power plays, we only had 2. What's up with the
DJ
officials?
Smith this year.
Right? I mean, that carries with it the implication that the power plays should even up at the end of the game, or at least be similar. If they're too tilted one way, that becomes unfair. So this is, to me, this is all baked in the pie. The only thing that happened is someone admitted that this is how it is done. Even though we all understand this, this is not unlike the first time you hear a pro wrestler say it's a cooperative sport. Like, of course, when I throw someone into the ropes, they're not going to come running back at me with their hands on at their side. We all understand this. Like, to me, the point is we're all lying to ourselves if we're outraged by what we heard from Tim Peel. It's complete. It's jealousy with a halo. It's this moral indignation of, oh, my fainting couch. Oh, an official said he's looking for an even up call. We've all lived with this. The players have lived with this. The fans, at every single level of hockey, Elliotte, this has been the reality. The outrage to me is hollow.
What if you don't look at it that
phony.
way, though? Like, what if you don't look at it that way? What if you look at it as, we talked about this. Who did a big story on this?
Darren Ravel.
How many Twitter followers does he have?
2 million.
Is he a hockey guy?
No.
Does he carry weight in the gambling world?
Yes, he does.
If you were running the National Hockey League, what would you think about that?
I would be concerned about it, but not to the point where I'd want to completely shut down someone's career. I would understand the reaction right away. Hold on a second, we're doing deals with these companies, and we want to make sure that there's the impression that we are all on the up and up. Having said all that, I don't know that I would have reacted the exact same way to this one. To shut down someone's career that way. I don't know. That to me is a line.
You know,
when we all know that this is the way the game is played, and this is the way the game is officiated, and this is the way that it's always been for every single official. This isn't just Tim Peel. Pick one. Pick one. Everybody calls it this way. You know why? Because that's the way they want the game to be called. And that was why I opened up this podcast with the question, how do you want the game called?
Well, again, I think we're arguing two different things here. I think you're talking about the hockey conversation, and I'm talking about the business conversation. And I think those are two very different conversations. Let me just say to you, I agree. I was shocked at the punishment. I honestly thought, Jeff, what they were going to say to him was, you get one more game. Your last game.
Because he's retiring, you get your final game.
And Brian Lewis was on the writer's block on Monday with Jeff Blair and Stephen Brunt, and he talked about what a huge punishment that was, that he's not getting the last game, and that if it happened to him, he would have been devastated. It would have been big for him, and I agree with that. Like, there were some people who said to me, it's no punishment because he was retiring in a month anyway. I disagree. I think it's a serious punishment because he doesn't get that game, his family doesn't get that game. And also, now, the first thing in a Google search with his name is that. And I think that's very, very severe. And, so I agree with you. I think it's a very big penalty. I just look at it purely from, I think when you look at it from a business point of view, and business is big now to pull yourselves out of the pandemic, I think they feel they had no choice.
Okay, then.
I don't think this is an officiating issue at all.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, I shouldn't say that. It's an officiating issue at all in terms of the way the game is played, but the judgment, I don't believe, is an officiating issue at all. The judgment in terms of the punishment.
I agree that there's two issues going on here then. But then if it was specific, if part of this conversation is this is a business issue that the NHL is addressing, outside of shutting down the official, and again, not firing the official, which carries its own consequences and potential for putting themselves in legal positions, and we all understand how that plays itself out, then where is the change? Where is the indication to the marketplace that we will not conduct business this way when everybody understands, either hockey followers or non-hockey followers who are now having conversations about hockey, all understand that this is the way it's done. And to feign outrage when an official says, hey, I'm looking for a makeup call, I'm looking for a 50-50 here. I don't know.
I get it. Like, Jeff, I do. I get it. And I think we're going to have a separate like after the break, and you do the tagline, because we have to please our great sponsors that pay us. We'll go into that conversation. But I would say this, let's please our sponsor so that we can both be paid. We bow at the altar of our sponsor, and we can continue the rest of the conversation. Because like I said, I think this is a business conversation and a hockey conversation. And I think sometimes the hockey people lose sight of the business, and that's why I'm taking that argument, and which is why people can argue with me that I'm losing sight of the hockey.